Lisbon, Portugal, 1925. In banks across the city, tellers are counting 500 escudo notes, crisp, perfect, fresh from the Bank of Portugal's official printer in London. They pass every test because they are not fakes. Same paper, same plates, same printer, genuine banknotes in every fiber. There is only one problem with them, and no teller on earth could spot it. The Bank of Portugal never ordered them. They were ordered by a 28-year-old clerk with a forged diploma and a criminal record, who found the one loophole in the very idea of money. You don't need to counterfeit banknotes if you can trick the official printer into printing real ones for you. His name is Artur Virgílio Alves dos Reis. Before he is finished, he will inject the equivalent of nearly 1% of Portugal's entire economy in unauthorized money, found his own bank to launder it, and come within reach of the endgame that would have made the whole crime legally invisible, buying the Bank of Portugal itself. Ponzi sold a miracle. Kreuger sold an empire. Lustig sold a tower. Alves dos Reis skipped all of that and simply printed the money. This is the crime that broke a republic. Alves dos Reis is born in Lisbon in 1896, the son of a struggling undertaker who ends in bankruptcy, a childhood spent watching respectability slip away. He is clever, mathematical, and completely unwilling to wait the decades his class and country expect of him. At 20, he wants a colonial posting in Angola. Good pay, fast promotion, a fresh start with his new wife. The problem, the good jobs require an engineering degree, and he has none, so he writes one. On a sheet of fine paper, he grants himself a diploma from the University of Oxford, covering, in his own words, engineering, geology, geometry, physics, metallurgy, mathematics, and, for good measure, philology. He notarizes it at a Lisbon office where nobody reads English and sails for Africa as a certified Oxford man. Here is the detail that makes Alves dos Reis different from every grifter you've met so far in this series. He is actually good at the jobs he lies his way into. In Angola, he repairs locomotives, runs public works, impresses everyone. The forged diploma didn't fake his competence, it faked his permission. That distinction between what you can do and what you're allowed to do becomes the theme of his life. Back in Lisbon by his mid-20s, he pulls his first real financial trick. He buys control of a struggling railway company, Ambaca, using a check for $100,000 he does not have. Then uses the company's own treasury, the moment he controls it, to cover his own check. He has purchased a company with its own money. It works until he tries it again on a bigger target, and in 1924 he lands in an Oporto jail cell for 54 days awaiting trial on fraud charges. Most men use a cell to repent. Alves dos Reis uses it as an office, because it is there, with nothing but time, that he thinks his way to the perfect crime. Follow his logic, because each step is small and reasonable, and the destination is breathtaking. Fact 1. Portugal's economy is a post-war wreck. The escudo has collapsed, and the Bank of Portugal has printing contracts running constantly. Fact 2. The banknotes themselves aren't printed in Portugal. They're printed under contract in London by Waterloo & Sons, one of the most prestigious security printers on earth. Fact 3. The fatal one. The printer doesn't decide what's authorized. It just follows documents. The bank's authority arrives as paper, contracts, letters, signatures, and Alves dos Reis knows, better than any man in Portugal, what can be done with paper. Out of jail, acquitted incredibly on a technicality he engineered himself, he goes to work. He drafts a masterpiece, a confidential contract, supposedly from the Bank of Portugal, authorizing a private syndicate to arrange a loan to the colony of Angola, with the loan backed by a special issue of banknotes. Secrecy, the document explains, is essential. Colonial finances are politically explosive. He forges the signatures of the bank's governors from samples printed on actual banknotes. The signatures were reproduced on every note in his pocket, a free forgery kit issued by the victim itself. He runs the documents through real notaries and real consulates, collecting genuine stamps that make the fake core look certified. Then he recruits believers with better clothes than his. A Dutch trader, a German businessman, a Portuguese diplomat's contacts, men whose respectability becomes part of the forgery. They genuinely believe they're in a discreet government deal. His fraud now has an honest sales force. Sound familiar? It should. It's the Kruger trick. Wrap the lie in real institutions, executed by a man 10 years younger. In London, Sir William Waterlow examines the documents from this impressive delegation. There are irregularities. The contract is odd, the secrecy odder. He asks the Bank of Portugal to confirm, through the delegation itself, whose confirmation comes back swiftly. Reassured, one of the world's great security printers begins printing 500 escudo notes, 200,000 of them, from the genuine Vasco da Gama plates. Face value, roughly 100 million escudos, close to 1% of Portugal's gross domestic product. Printed. Legally. For a fraud. There's one flaw Alves dos Reis can't fix. The notes are duplicates, the same serial numbers as notes already circulating. But who compares serial numbers on opposite ends of a country? The suitcases roll into Lisbon, and the spending begins. You can't exchange a mountain of cash without questions. So in 1925, Alves dos Reis does the audacious obvious. He founds his own bank. The Banco Angola e Metrópole opens with branches in Lisbon and Porto, offering loans on generous terms, exchanging currency, moving his escudos into the bloodstream of the economy. And the strangest chapter of this story begins. The crime acts like a stimulus program. Credit loosens. Businesses find loans. He buys buildings, taxis, farms, jewelry for his wife, and companies, dozens of companies. Money invented by a forger is doing what money does, indistinguishable from the real thing, because it is the real thing. But Alves dos Reis knows the clock is ticking, and his endgame is the most brilliant stroke of all. He begins buying shares of the Bank of Portugal itself. Think it through. The Bank of Portugal is a private company, and it is the only entity with the legal standing to detect, denounce, and prosecute an unauthorized issue of its own notes. Control the bank and the crime doesn't get covered up. It gets ratified. The counterfeiter becomes the central banker, and the evidence becomes his private property. He accumulates over 10,000 shares. He needs 45,000. He is 1/4 of the way to owning the scene of the crime. What stops him isn't an auditor. It's envy. His bank lends too cheaply, grows too fast. Rivals start asking where its bottomless escudos come from. The newspaper O Século begins digging and publishes a fateful speculation. The new bank must be laundering money for German interests. The story is wrong, but it sends inspectors to a branch in Porto. They examine the 500 escudo notes for hours and find them perfect, because they are. And then, in December 1925, someone finally does the one thing no one had done. Lays two perfect banknotes side by side, same serial number. Within days, the Bank of Portugal withdraws every 500 escudo note in the nation. Crowds besiege the counters. Alves dos Reis is arrested aboard ship, returning from Angola, where he had been shopping with his remaining fortune for more of the country to buy. The investigation takes 5 years, partly because the fraud is so clean that prosecutors struggle to prove which documents exactly are false. From his cell, Alves dos Reis forges new documents implicating the bank's own governors, and for a while, half of Lisbon believes the bank was in on it. He is finally sentenced in 1930, 20 years. He serves the full sentence and walks out in 1945 into a world at war's end that has completely forgotten him. He is offered money for his memoirs and turns down fortunes to lie about buried treasure in Angola. The man who printed 100 million escudos dies in Lisbon in 1955, nearly penniless, insisting to the end that he'd repented. His funeral is paid for with borrowed money. In London, Waterlow and Sons is dragged by the Bank of Portugal through one of the longest civil cases in English history, all the way to the House of Lords, and loses, a judgment so heavy and a humiliation so complete that the great printer never recovers and is eventually swallowed by a rival. Sir William Waterlow, the man who took the delegation at its word, is remembered for exactly one decision. But the deepest damage is to something you can't print: belief. The scandal lands on a country already sick of chaos. Portugal's first republic had burned through more than 40 governments in 16 years, and the spectacle of money itself being unmaskable as fiction becomes, for many Portuguese, the final proof that the whole system was rotten. Within months of the scandal breaking, the army moves. The Republic falls in a coup in 1926, and out of the wreckage rises Antonio Salazar. First as the finance minister brought in to restore the currency's honor, then as dictator. He will rule Portugal for 4 decades, one forged contract, 200,000 perfect banknotes, and at the end of the chain, a dictatorship that outlives its cause by 40 years. No other con in this series changed the fate of an entire nation. And notice, one last time, the pattern that unites all 4 men in this series so far. None of them attacked the locks. They attacked the trust behind the locks, the signature, the auditor, the official letterhead, the printer's good name. Money, it turns out, was never paper. It was belief, wearing paper's clothes. The playbook. What Alves dos Reis adds to the manual. Rule 1. Attack the paperwork, not the vault. The signature is always softer than the steel. Rule 2. Real institutions will certify a lie for you, one reasonable-looking stamp at a time. Rule 3. The endgame is owning the referee. If the only judge is for sale, the crime was never a crime. The paper empire ledger now stands at roughly 271 million stolen. It will grow. Next time on Paper Empire, she walked into Cleveland's banks, claiming to be the secret daughter of the richest man alive, Andrew Carnegie, with a forged promissory note in her handbag. The banks didn't just believe her. They begged to lend her millions. The story of Cassie Chadwick. Next. Subscribe.